Hello fellow Sooners and greetings from Fort Benning, Georgia. This is Ezra Mills and I will talk about racial inequality and a social justice champion when it comes to this topic, EJI, which stands for Equal Justice Initiative. First, let's look at some key concerns when talking about racial inequality. There is economic injustice, which is characterized by the racial wealth gap, poverty, huge differences when it comes to housing, and unemployment rates. Racial inequality also refers to social disadvantages that affect different races and minorities in the U.S., and they become evident when we look at the distribution of wealth, power, and general opportunities in life that minorities have in the U.S. compared to the dominant race. Crime rates and incarceration are another factor when discussing racial inequality. These points are a result of historic oppression and overall prejudice that minorities face and that can have an effect of every aspect of their lives. Since I just mentioned historic oppression, I would like to mention lynchings in America as well, which is a project that EJI focused on, and I will discuss this further on later when I talk about the Equal Justice Initiative and their work. What are some pro and con arguments concerning the topic? Well, in my opinion, there are no pro arguments when it comes to equal justice and racial equality. However, from the point of view of a racist who belongs to the dominant group, I can understand one aspect that benefits them, which is that they will remain the group with power and with that wealth. Con arguments, however, are social disadvantages, which we just discussed, oppression, lack of opportunities, chronic poverty, unfair access to education, racial profiling, and police brutality against minorities. How does racial inequality relate to diversity and social justice? Well, let's look at the definition of diversity first by Merriam-Webster Dictionary. This states that the condition of having or being composed of different elements is diversity, especially the inclusion of different types of people, such as people of different races or cultures, in a group or organization. So, in my opinion, this is an oxymoron because racial inequality doesn't belong into one sentence with diversity and social justice. A quote from the City University of New York states that the concept of diversity encompasses acceptance and respect. It means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. Diversity is more than acknowledging and tolerating differences. It means understanding and appreciating different cultures and groups. Therefore, racial inequality actually leads to discrimination, and it hinders diversity and social justice. In social science, racial inequality is typically analyzed as imbalances in the distribution of power, economic resources, and opportunities. I would argue that current racial inequalities in the U.S. have their roots in over 300 years of cultural, economic, physical, legal, and political discrimination based on race, or, to put it simply, based on the exploitation and slavery. This is where we will go back to the Equal Justice Initiative and their project, Lynching in America. What is the Equal Justice Initiative? EJI is a nonprofit organization in Alabama, which was founded in 1994. Among some things that they do is that they represent prisoners who are wrongly convicted, that are on death row, and their purpose is to provide legal representation to those who may have been denied a fair trial. They also really work on raising awareness for racial inequality. The founder of EJI, Bryan Stevenson, has won major legal challenges eliminating excessive and unfair sentencing, exonerating innocent death row prisoners, confronting abuse of the incarcerated and the mentally ill, and aiding children prosecuted as adults. He has successfully argued several cases in the United States Supreme Court and recently won a historic ruling that mandatory life without parole sentences for all children 17 or younger are unconstitutional. Mr. Stevenson and his staff won reversals, relief, or releases for over 115 wrongly condemned prisoners on death row. He has initiated major anti-poverty and anti-discrimination efforts that challenge the legacy of racial inequality, including major projects to educate communities about slavery, lynching, and racial segregation, and we will talk about some of these projects later. He is also a professor of law at the New York University School of Law. One of these projects is a special campaign called Lynching in America, which EJI launched this summer. It's a new interactive digital experience, as they call it, which was created in partnership with Google. The website brings together EJI's extensive research and resulting data with the stories of lynching victims as they're told by their descendants through audio stories and short documentaries that can be watched on YouTube. Visitors can also explore interactive maps that include the locations of racial terror lynchings and in-depth profiles of the victims, and we will look at one of these pages later on. Data visualizations track the Great Migration, a time when millions of African Americans fled the terror of the South to find refuge in the North and West, which shaped the demographic geography of the U.S. today. Their stance is, in order to heal the deep wounds of our present, we must face the truth of our past. And the best practices that EJI uses is that they're really confronting the legacy of racial terror. They're talking about it and they're putting it out there on social media. They're having cooperations right now with Google and Facebook. They are on Twitter. They have an exhibition that's currently going on until September at the Brooklyn Museum in New York, and they are erecting historic markers as well. Here we can see the website lynchinginamerica.eji.org. You can get to that website if you just Google EJI, and then this is one of their projects. So you can see once you scroll down from here, this is the next page that shows. And so lynching emerged as a vicious tool of racial control in the South after Civil War, as a way to reestablish white supremacy and suppress black civil rights. At the end of the 19th century, Southern lynch mobs targeted and terrorized African Americans. And this site, as it says down here on the second half, this site features painful stories of America's history of racial injustice. In order to heal the deep wounds of our present, we must face the truth of our past. And you can see this, kind of their slogan, throughout their entire website. You can find it again on Twitter, you can find it in videos, you can find the founder of the organization talking about it in interviews. So they state that lynchings were public acts of racial terrorism intended to instill fear in entire black communities. Government officials frequently turned a blind eye or condoned the mob violence. The effects of racial terror lynchings are still felt today. Here we can see the interactive map that they have on their website, and it shows that those 20 states in the South, how many people were being lynched between 1877 and 1950, and it's more than 4,000. So if we actually scroll over the state of Alabama, it shows that there was 361 reported lynchings, but please emphasize on the fact that this is just reported. There are so many more that have not been reported. You can scroll over South Carolina, you can scroll over Florida, and it shows you different numbers. And then where we can see these white dots here, that's where they have cases of people that they're doing stories on. So for example, in Alabama, if you click on this here, it'll tell you the story of Elizabeth Lawrence, who was lynched in Jefferson County. EJI really is a social media expert, I would say, because they have their Twitter website, which you can see here, and they update it almost on a daily basis. You can see the news, for example, just a couple of days ago last week, which was the end of July. If you saw on Google, it was, Google showed a picture depicting the march to protest 100 years ago, the silent march. And that was on the EJI website, and it was also on Twitter. So this is just a screenshot of the EJI Twitter page. And you can see the video here. This is just when I decided to take that screenshot. It says, "We are haunted by our history of racial inequality." And if you watch that video, it's just a minute long, but it's very powerful. There is another video that you can look up on YouTube or on their website. It's called Abbeville. And to quote EJI, it says, "To watch Abbeville is to witness the power of truth-telling to pave the way towards healing and reconciliation for individuals, families, communities, and EJI believes our entire country. By erecting permanent markers that memorialize lynchings, EJI is working with communities to change the American landscape to tell a more complete and honest story about our history." This is the website of the Brooklyn Museum, which shows the exhibition that EJI has going on there right now until the end of September in collaboration with Google. So in this exhibition, EJI presents their research and combines it with the history of lynchings and connects it to the artworks and the material from the archives of the Brooklyn Museum. And as we can see, I know it's a little cut off, but it said here that the exhibition also features EJI's plans to open a national monument, I think that's what it said, in Alabama, in Montgomery, named the Memorial of, I think it said, Equality and Justice, in commemorating victims of racial terror lynchings. So this is information that I didn't even find on their website, but however, Brooklyn Museum presents it there. If we go onto EJI's website, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what you can see. Here on top, there is actually the Explore tab. This here, I know it's cut off again, I'm sorry about that, but you can click on racial justice, on children in prison, mass incarceration, and also death penalty will be another tab. And then there's on the drop-down menu, for example, for mass incarceration, you see that they discuss poverty, unreliable convictions, and they just talk about so many important different things that I think is really worth to have a look. My thoughts all in all about this organization are that I think they're a very powerful initiative that utilize various social media outlets, exhibitions in museums, and actually erect memorials or historic markers in order to get the attention that they deserve, and with that also the funding. They are supported by researchers, and they support their own causes with data that they find, which I think is important, because oftentimes we hear people talking about, oh, there is no racial inequality, you're just making that up, where's the data to support it? And well, EJI has the data to support it. So I think that they are agents of change where it really matters the most, because they're located in Montgomery, Alabama. And so that's where you could see on that interactive map that that's where most of the lynchings happened, and racism is still really prevalent, unfortunately, in the South. And they're right there in the middle of it all, working on the cause of diversity and justice. So all in all, I am glad to see that they're supported by Google, that they're able to raise awareness rather than just silencing an uncomfortable topic. And I hope that you take the time to look at them. Thank you for listening to me, for your attention, and take care.